Behind the gilded chandeliers, the velvet drapes, and the glittering balls of a 19th century royal court, darkness festered. Beneath the surface of royal etiquette and opulence were secrets so vile they were whispered only in the shadows. Poisoned goblets, forbidden affairs, betrayals that toppled lives. These were not mere rumors, but the hidden crimes of those sworn to rule with honor. Courtiers smiled in public while plotting in private. Servants knew too much and vanished without explanation. The crown itself became a mask for deceit, and every throne hid a story of power abused, innocence destroyed, and justice evaded. This is the tragic story of ambition, corruption, and the hidden crimes of a 19th century royal court. The 19th century royal court was a theater of grandeur. Palaces stretched into the sky with golden roofs, marble halls, and crystal chandeliers. Every surface gleamed with wealth, and every gesture, from the bow of a courtier to the tilt of a queen's head, was carefully orchestrated to maintain an image of perfection. To outsiders, it appeared as if the monarchy existed in a world apart, flawless, serene, and untouchable. Yet behind this brilliance lay a labyrinth of shadows. The court was a place of secrecy, where public appearances were meticulously crafted to hide private vices. Portraits immortalized smiling monarchs, yet history would reveal that behind those smiles lay deceit, jealousy, and crime. A whisper in a corridor could ruin a reputation. A letter misread could lead to imprisonment. And worse, some crimes were deliberately concealed to protect the throne itself. Servants and courtiers were both witnesses and pawns. The lowest-ranking attendants often saw the darkest deeds poison slipped into a favorite's wine, a forbidden liaison that could spark scandal, or a political betrayal that ensured one rival's downfall. They were sworn to secrecy, either by loyalty or fear, because even the faintest rumor could ripple through the palace and destroy careers, reputations, and lives. One common method of concealment was the careful staging of deaths. Illnesses that swept through the palace might have been entirely natural, but sometimes they were not. A sudden fever, a mysterious collapse, or a rapid decline could mask murder by poisoning. The medical knowledge of the era was limited. Even the most suspicious deaths could be attributed to natural causes, and doctors, often reliant on the court's favor, could be bribed or coerced into silence. Political intrigue also fueled hidden crimes. Royal courts were arenas of power as much as luxury. Alliances were fragile, and loyalty was transactional. Courtiers engaged in blackmail, espionage, and secret correspondence, each letter potentially containing the seeds of ruin. In many cases, the court itself became a network of predators, each vying for advantage while hiding behind the trappings of ceremony and protocol. Even social rituals, like balls and receptions, concealed danger. A misplaced drink, a whispered insult, or an overheard comment could trigger consequences that were lethal or ruinous. In an environment where appearances were everything, a single misstep could cost lives. This was the court as a stage, but the stakes were real, and the audience often unaware. The psychological weight of this hidden world was immense. Royals, courtiers, and servants alike lived in constant vigilance. Smiles were weapons. Favors were transactions. Friendship was temporary. Fear became a subtle, omnipresent force, governing behavior in a society that outwardly prized decorum. And beneath the glitter of candlelight and the scent of roses, the court nurtured some of the most infamous secretive crimes and history acts that would not see daylight for decades, if ever. Beneath the glittering chandeliers and orchestral music of the royal court, shadows moved silently. To the casual observer, these courts were temples of refinement, elegance, and civility. But behind the curtains, under heavy tapestries, and along candlelit corridors, hidden stories unfolded, stories not meant for the public eye. This was not merely palace gossip. It was the theater of discreet intrigue, where ambition and rivalry often manifested in subtle acts of manipulation. One of the most common tools in these royal intrigues was subtle influence. In an era before modern investigative methods, careful planning and discretion offered a way to resolve conflicts, manage rivals, or shift alliances without public scrutiny. Goblets of wine, steaming cups of tea, or elaborate feasts could conceal strategic maneuvers. Rumors circulated about sudden misfortunes or unexpected illnesses, yet behind closed doors, insiders often suspected deliberate schemes to influence outcomes. A royal banquet could be both a celebration and a moment of careful political strategy. Physicians and attendants might record official explanations, while the true circumstances remained known only to a few. Alongside strategic maneuvers came clandestine relationships. Royal courts in the 19th century, though governed by strict etiquette, were often arenas of personal ambition, jealousy, and complex alliances. Private affairs carried consequences far beyond personal matters. They could shift loyalties, create tension among advisors, and invite the use of secrets as leverage. A whispered conversation in the Queen's chambers or a prince's private liaison could become the basis for negotiation, persuasion, or political pressure. These hidden interactions were no less significant than formal policy. In the court, personal relationships could influence power and decisions profoundly. Disappearance and reassignment were also part of the court's hidden mechanisms. Attendants, scribes, or officials who knew too much or overstepped boundaries could be quietly moved or reassigned to distant posts. Individuals could vanish from certain circles without explanation, and their absence was noted, though rarely questioned. Knowledge itself was treated as sensitive, and those who witnessed too much understood the importance of discretion. To overstep social or professional boundaries could have serious repercussions, and careful navigation of court life was essential for survival. Financial oversight and administration provided another avenue for subtle intrigue. The management of royal estates, treasuries, and resources offered opportunities for mismanagement or strategic allocation. Advisors, courtiers, and officials often exercised discretion over funds, balancing public appearances with private interests. Lavish events, fine clothing, and ornate decorations showcased the court's wealth, yet many resources were carefully distributed or redirected behind the scenes. When questions arose, they were addressed privately, ensuring that the court's public image remained untarnished. What made these courtly intrigues so compelling was not merely their presence, but the skill with which they were concealed. Entire networks of silence and protocol ensured that sensitive information remained protected. Servants were trained not only to assist, but to maintain discretion. Advisors, guards, and scribes all understood the importance of confidentiality. An unspoken pact bound the court to preserve the image of the monarchy, to navigate rivalries carefully, and to manage delicate situations without public awareness. Secrets were shared selectively, understood by all who needed to know, but rarely spoken aloud. The physical architecture of the palaces themselves contributed to the secrecy of courtly life. Behind the grand ballrooms were hidden passageways, concealed doors, and private chambers. These were not merely architectural curiosities. They served as discreet meeting spots, private retreats, and places for confidential discussions. Courtiers could meet in hidden alcoves, messages could be exchanged through concealed corridors, and officials could manage sensitive matters out of public view. The palace was not only a seat of power, but a labyrinth of secrets, where walls held memories of both grandeur and discretion. One of the most delicate aspects of these hidden intrigues involved the roles and influence of women in the court. Queens, royal mistresses, and attendants often navigated a web of expectations and influence. Women who gained significant sway might be challenged or carefully monitored. Those who observed too much were sometimes moved to different positions or reassigned. The court required careful balance. Women were both influencers and participants in courtly strategy, navigating social expectations and political maneuvers with skill and caution. Political intrigue intensified these challenges. Alliances between nations could be affected by personal matters or rumors. Marriages, often arranged for diplomatic purposes, carried responsibilities and risks that extended beyond the personal sphere. A royal bride could influence court dynamics through her presence, her family connections, and her network of associates. Envoys and officials needed to tread carefully, understanding that personal relationships, reputations, and alliances were all interwoven with political outcomes. In these moments, actions in the court could affect not just individuals, but broader political landscapes. The culture of the court shaped behavior and social dynamics. Awareness of potential risks created a heightened sense of observation and discretion. Every gesture was watched, every conversation considered carefully. Courtiers learned to navigate these complexities with grace and diplomacy, maintaining appearances while managing private strategies. The polished exterior of the court often masked layers of negotiation, persuasion, and careful management of relationships. Courtly life in the 19th century was structured, deliberate, and precise. Influence depended on understanding the intricate web of alliances, expectations, and hierarchies. Survival and success required not only loyalty and intelligence, but discretion, strategic thinking, and social skill. The royal court functioned as both a center of governance and a microcosm of society, where subtlety, negotiation, and awareness of surroundings were essential. Despite the careful management of appearances, traces of courtly maneuvering remained. Letters, documents, and accounts preserved in archives revealed fragments of strategy, influence, and negotiation. Historians can piece together the interactions and decisions that shaped court life, offering a glimpse into the complex balance of power, etiquette, and influence. Even centuries later, the legacy of these interactions persists in the architecture, records, and cultural memory of the palaces that remain. The royal court of the 19th century was a place of beauty, elegance, and subtle complexity. For those who walked its halls, every gesture carried significance, every conversation required thought, and every gathering offered both opportunity and responsibility. To live in the court was to navigate a world where awareness, tact, and intelligence determined one's influence and success. The hidden crimes of the 19th century royal court did not vanish with the passing of its rulers. They left a mark far deeper than any marble statue or gilded throne could convey. These acts of treachery, betrayal, and murder rippled through the corridors of power, shaping not only the lives of those involved but also the society that watched, feared, and eventually chronicled them. For the public, the revelation of secret poisonings, forbidden liaisons, and silent murders shattered the comforting illusion that royalty embodied virtue. To witness the fallibility of the crown was to see the very heart of authority tainted with darkness. The impact on society was immediate yet subtle. Newspapers, long devoted to reporting court ceremonies and royal appearances, found an eager audience for the whispers of crime hidden behind velvet drapes. Sensationalist journalism capitalized on every rumor. Tales of a poisoned glass, a vanished servant, a clandestine affair were devoured with equal measures of horror and fascination. Penny dreadfuls transformed these real-life horrors into stories of Gothic intrigue, blending fact with legend. In these narratives, the royal court became a shadowed stage where ambition and cruelty played out behind a mask of elegance. The fear and fascination of the public merged, creating a culture that simultaneously revered and reviled monarchy. This climate of suspicion also permeated the aristocracy itself. Courtiers and minor nobles, acutely aware of the hidden crimes swirling around them, grew increasingly paranoid. No gesture went unnoticed, no whispered comment escaped scrutiny. Alliances were formed and broken, not only for political advantage, but for survival. A seemingly innocent favor might conceal a deadly trap, and a private conversation could end in imprisonment or exile. The court became a theater of constant vigilance, where appearances were armor and secrecy a weapon. Those who underestimated the subtlety of these dynamics often paid with their freedom, reputations, or lives. The monarchy itself was transformed by these hidden crimes, though public acknowledgement was often carefully avoided. Behind closed doors, kings and queens confronted betrayals from advisors, poisoning attempts by rivals, and the ever-present threat of scandal. To maintain the legitimacy of the crown, crimes were concealed, often erased from official records or attributed to illness or accident. The palace became a vault of secrets, where power was exercised not only through edicts and ceremonies, but through manipulation, coercion, and sometimes murder. The very image of majesty depended on the careful management of what was seen and what remained hidden. These hidden crimes also prompted slow but significant changes in law and oversight. Cases of poisoning, murder, and fraud within the palace, though often concealed from public scrutiny, led to discussions about accountability and surveillance. Medical practices were scrutinized more closely, with royal physicians sometimes required to maintain detailed records to avoid malpractice. Legal reforms slowly emerged, aimed at curbing the most egregious abuses of privilege and protecting those who were otherwise powerless within the court hierarchy. While the application of justice remained unequal, the exposure of these crimes laid the groundwork for future demands for transparency and accountability in high places. Culturally, the shadow of royal crime deeply influenced literature and media. Gothic novels, plays, and later films drew inspiration from the secret violence lurking behind opulence. Tales of poisoned goblets, hidden letters, and secret passageways became staples of storytelling, shaping a collective imagination in which the palace was not merely a symbol of grandeur, but also a locus of terror. The public fascination with these stories ensured that the perpetrators, whether monarchs themselves, their courtiers, or their confidants, achieved a form of immortality, etched into both history and legend. Psychologically, the legacy of these hidden crimes was profound. The public learned that appearances could deceive, and that those entrusted with power might conceal malevolence behind a veneer of sophistication. Respectability, once assumed to correlate with virtue, was revealed as a fragile mask. This realization fostered an undercurrent of distrust toward authority, a theme that resonated far beyond the 19th century. Even today, the modern fascination with royal scandals, whether historical or contemporary, owes much to these early revelations of duplicity and crime. The physical spaces of the royal court themselves carry this haunting legacy. Palaces, once symbols of power and elegance, are now historical sites where shadows seem to linger longer than expected. Walking through the hallways, visitors encounter gilded furniture, opulent tapestries, and hidden doors behind which secrets once festered. These spaces remind us that grandeur and crime can coexist, and that the beauty of a palace often masks its darker history. Every curtain hides whispers. Every corridor has borne witness to fear. The architecture itself becomes a silent storyteller, echoing the hidden transgressions of a bygone era. Moreover, the hidden crimes of the royal court serve as a cautionary tale about power unchecked. When authority operates without oversight, when secrets are preserved for the sake of image, cruelty finds fertile ground. Ambition, jealousy, and greed flourish when accountability is absent. The 19th century court demonstrates that even in societies devoted to etiquette, ceremony, and law, darkness can thrive when human desire and institutional secrecy converge. Finally, the legacy of these hidden crimes endures in how we perceive history itself. Documents once sealed, letters once private, and rumors once whispered have become the threads historians follow to reconstruct truth from shadow. Yet even with modern scholarship, many questions remain unanswered. Who ordered the concealment of a death? Which whispered threats were realized? How many acts of betrayal and murder were successfully erased by time? This uncertainty keeps the past alive and haunting, reminding us that the crimes of power are rarely fully visible, even to those who study them most closely. The hidden crimes of the 19th century royal court are more than mere historical anecdotes. They are reflections of the human capacity for deception, the fragility of justice, and the enduring tension between appearance and reality. They illustrate that power, when cloaked in secrecy, can corrupt not only the individual but entire systems of governance. And perhaps most chillingly, they reveal that the allure of grandeur can blind society to the darkness lurking beneath. Even centuries later, the whispers remain. The gilded halls, the velvet curtains, and the ornate furniture still seem to echo with the plots and betrayals of the past. In these shadows, history warns us. Behind every crown, behind every throne, behind every smile of elegance, secrets may fester. Some of the most dangerous crimes are not committed in the open. They are hidden in plain sight, masked by beauty, protected by power, and preserved by silence. If this journey into the shadows of royalty left you unsettled, remember the past is never truly gone. The secrets of the palace whisper still, and power can hide its crimes behind even the most glittering facade. If you want to uncover more hidden histories, forgotten scandals, and the dark truths that time tried to erase, subscribe and join me for the next exploration. Because history's shadows are long, and some secrets are never meant to be fully revealed.